Everyone and welcome. In this video we're going to set up Active Directory on a Windows Server operating system 2019, and the 2019 version is just for demonstration purposes. The procedure would pretty much be the same on 2016, 2012 and even the latest 2022 version as well. So without further ado, let's move on to the prerequisites. And the first one that you have for that is to have a Windows Server operating system, any version like I mentioned previously, pre-installed. So you need to have a machine with the Windows Server OS pre-installed. If you do not have that, you can see the video that I've made to install it on your machine. Essentially, it should be appearing on the top right corner. And the second item that we need to do is to set up a static IP address on the server. And the last item would be to ensure that we do have administrative privilege available for the server. So let's go ahead and I'm going to turn on my virtual machine where I have Windows Server OS 2019 installed, and let's go from there. So like I mentioned, the first thing is to have a Windows Server operating system installed. I have it right over here. It's an evaluation version of 2019 Data Center. And the next thing that we need to verify is that we do have administrative privilege available on that. So right now I'm signed in as an administrator. We should be able to verify that quickly from over here, and I can see that it's the administrator account. But just to be extra sure, let's turn on the PowerShell, and here we can use the whoami command, and it is confirming that I'm signed in using the administrator account. It was evident from the username as well, but just for extra verification. And the third thing that we had to do was to ensure that it has a static IP address assigned. For that, click on Windows and go to Server Manager, or if it's not appearing over here, you can simply search for that as well. Now within the Server Manager, go to Local Server. By default, in the interface section, it would likely be showing this instead of an IP address, because right now the address is being assigned by DHCP and it's not a static address. So simply click on this, and then on the interface, go to Properties. From here, select IP version 4 and go to Properties. Now this is where you want to set up the static IP address. In case you already know what the address and the preferred DNS servers would be, you can just type them in manually. Alternatively, what you could do is from the search, open a command prompt and use the command ipconfig/all. So this is showing me the current settings that the DHCP server has allocated to me. So I'm just going to basically set the preferred address as the static IP address on my machine. So let's move this a bit over here and also minimize it a bit. Alright, so I'm going to select use the following IP address and set this IP, the IPv4 address over here. Then the subnet mask is going to be the same as well, which is 255.255.255.0. Then in the default gateway, it's mentioned over here 10.10.12.1. And in the preferred DNS server, I'm going to use the static IP address that I've assigned to the server, which is 10.10.12.15. And as an alternative DNS server, I'm going to use Google's public DNS, which goes by the 8.8.8.8 IP address, and then select Validate Settings upon exit and click on OK. And navigate to Server Manager, and right now I can see that it now has a static IP address. So let's move back to the PowerPoint. So from the prerequisites, we had a Windows Server operating system pre-installed, so I'm going to check this option. Then the second item was to have a static IP address assigned to the server. We did that as well, so let's check this. And the last item was to have administrative privilege available for the server, which we also verified. So we're good to go on all three fronts. The next step is to basically install the Active Directory. So without further ado, let's move on to that phase. To install the Active Directory, you have to go back to your Server Manager and then click on Manage. From here, click on Add Rules and Features. And from the first option, simply select Next. Now you have two options. You can either have a role-based or feature-based installation, or the remote desktop services installation. I'm going to go with the first one. Then since I only have one server, which is this Windows Server operating system available over here, I'm going to select this one. In case you had more, you could install the Active Directory on those two. Then select next. From here, you need to select the Active Directory domain services, and it is going to ask you that there are other features or services that are required for the Active Directory domain services to function properly. So just simply keep this checkbox checked, which is include management tools if applicable, and then select add features. Then you also need to check the DNS server option as well, and it is also going to require some other features. So simply click on add features. And that is all that you need for a basic Active Directory. In case you want other features to be available, you can select any of those that are needed and then click on next. From here, if you are interested in any specific features, you can check those as well. But for a basic installation, this should be good to go. So I'm simply going to click on next from here as well, and then next again, and then next after that as well. Now, the last thing that you have to do is to click on this install button, and it will start the installation of Active Directory on your machine. Right, so the installation has completed, and the next step is to promote the server to a domain controller. So this will be a hyperlink. Simply click on this, and now you're presented with three options for deployment. One is to add this domain controller to an existing domain. That is, if you already have one, you can select it from here. Or you can add a new domain to an existing forest. That is, if you already have a forest. Or you can select the third option, which is to add a new forest. Now, since you want to add a new forest, since this is a fresh machine, I'm going to select this option. And then over here, you have to enter the root domain name that you want to configure. Once you've entered the root domain name, simply click on next. After that, you would have domain controller options, from where you can select the functional level of the new forest and the root domain. So you want to select the highest one that is available. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because you might be doing this configuration on a Windows Server 2016 or 2012 or maybe 2022. So your options might be different. But in my case, the highest one available is Windows Server 2016. So I'm going to keep this as is. And the last thing is to add the password. To set up a password for directory services restore mode. So I'm going to now enter the password and then the confirmation as well. Once done, click on next. Now you would be presented with an option to create a DNS delegation, but for this server it cannot be done because it currently does not have any authoritative parent zone. So I'll just simply click on next. Then the NetBIOS domain name will be automatically detected. In case it's not, in my case, it would be ALP. So as you can see, it was automatically taken, and then click on next again. Then you need to select the location for the Active Directory DS database, log files, and sys volume. I'm going to keep them as default, but in case you want to have them at a different location, you can do that from this wizard, from this tab. And now, lastly, you have all of the settings that you essentially configured up above. You can quickly have a look at them, and in case you made a mistake, you can go back and change them. Otherwise, if everything's good to go, just click on next. And then it's going to check for all the prerequisites for domain controller operation. In case there are any warnings, you'll be fine. But in case there are any errors to installation, you would have to make those changes. So as we can see, all the prerequisite checks passed successfully. We can click on install to begin the installation. We do have a few warnings. In case you want to have a look at them and solve those too, you can, but you would not need to, but that would not really affect your installation process. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and click on install, and the installation might take a short time essentially, so I'm going to pause the video. Alright, so the server has successfully been configured as a domain controller, and my system will now be restarted. I'll pause the video while it restarts. Alright, so the system is back up. I'm going to issue the Control-Alt-Delete command and type in my password. And we are all set. Now, the next thing that you can do in case you want to add any users or computer, you can click on Tools and go to Active Directory Users and Computers. And then from here, you will see the domain and all the options. If you want to add a computer, you can go into this one. If you want to add a user, you can go into this one. It's pretty basic. But yeah, from here just select new computer or new user at the end and you would be able to add that. And I just like to cover one other important thing first, which would be going to tools and then the DNS settings. So if we click this, we can see that we do have a forward lookup zone available already. And I can see my host name along with the IP address over here. But if I click on the reverse lookup zone, there's currently none present. So I'll create one right now. The wizard opens and from here select next. It would be the primary zone and I also want to store the zone in Active Directory. So let's select next. And then for this one, the second option is the one that we want to go with. Select next again. And it would be an IPv4 reverse lookup zone since I'm using the IPv4, not the IPv6 essentially. So I'll select next over here as well. Now over here you have to type in the first 24 bits of your network or the first 3 octets of your subnet or your network essentially. So I'll type in that over here. So in my case it was 10.10.12, yours could be different, and then select next again. And I'm going to only allow secure dynamic updates. You can go with the insecure ones as well in case you want, or not allow dynamic updates altogether. And then select next and we are all done. So now if you go to the reverse lookup zones, we do not see our Windows Server 2019 over here. So for that, go to alp.local and select your Windows Server essentially, and then go to properties. From here, check this checkbox, which is update associated pointer record, and click on OK. Then you can reload this and then go to the reverse lookup over here and select refresh, and the reverse entry for that is now available as well. So in the forward lookup zone, we have the host name onto the IP address mapping, and in the reverse lookup zone, we have the IP address to the host name mapping available. Now, after adding these records and after everything that we've done, the preferred DNS would likely have changed. So for that, I just want to go and quickly verify the connection settings. So let's go back to the local server and then click over here, and then we'll go to its properties and then select the IP version 4's properties. And as you can see, it's now set to the 127.0.0.1 address, which is basically local host, since now this is acting as a DNS server. I'd like to change that back to the IP address, the static IP that we've assigned to this machine, which would be 10.10.12.15. So let's do that. So after setting this, you can click on OK and then close this, and we are all set. Now, one last thing that I would like to do is to verify that the records that we set are working. So for that, you can go to PowerShell or command prompt session. So let's do that. Now from here, let's try to resolve first the domain name that we have. We'll use the nslookup command for that. And as you can see, the host name alp.local essentially resolves to 10.10.12.15, which is correct. So now let's do a reverse a lookup on essentially the IP address instead. For that, we'll use the nslookup as well. And as you can see over here, nslookup 10.10.12.15 resolves to win-s19-tc1.alp.local, which is exactly correct. So that is all for this video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, please drop a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. In case you have any questions, please drop them down in the comment section below, and have a nice day.